Hey, when the 50-year married couple came to Giuseppe's restaurant, the waiter made judgments based on their old-fashioned clothes. These types of customers don't tip, he thought, and gave them poor service. But when the manager learned the couple was a Gold Star family, the waiter's world was turned upside down. Harold and Dorothy Bennett were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary at Giuseppe's Fine Dining, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. They had saved for months to afford this special dinner at one of the city's most prestigious establishments. Harold, 74 years old, was a retired Army colonel who had served 32 years in the military, including 3 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Dorothy, 72, was a devoted military wife who had raised their family while Harold served overseas, and who had endured the ultimate sacrifice when their son, Captain James Bennett, was killed in action in Iraq in 2009. They were what the military community calls a Gold Star family, a family that has lost a service member in combat. Dorothy wore her Gold Star mother pin with quiet pride, though few people understood its significance. For their anniversary dinner, Harold wore his best suit, a navy blue one he'd owned for 15 years, well-maintained but clearly not expensive. Dorothy wore a simple floral dress she'd bought at a department store, along with her late son's purple heart pin and her Gold Star mother pin. They looked like what they were, a middle-class elderly couple who had lived through decades of military service, sacrifice, and loss. Giuseppe's restaurant was the kind of place where entrees started at $45, and the wine list included bottles that cost more than Harold's monthly pension check. The dining room featured white tablecloths, crystal glasses, and waitstaff in formal black attire. It was elegant, expensive, and intimidating for customers who weren't accustomed to fine dining. Their waiter was Kevin Walsh, 26 years old, a struggling actor who worked at Giuseppe's to pay his rent. Kevin had worked in upscale restaurants for 3 years and had developed what he considered a keen eye for good tippers versus problem customers. In his experience, elderly customers who dressed modestly were usually difficult, ordered the cheapest items, and left minimal tips. When Harold and Dorothy were seated at table 12, a corner table that Kevin considered less desirable, he immediately made assumptions about them based on their appearance. "Great," Kevin muttered to his colleague Jessica as he approached their table. "Elderly couple, cheap clothes, probably going to order water in the senior discount menu." "Kevin, you don't know that," Jessica replied. "They might surprise you." "Trust me, I can spot the non-tippers from across the room." Kevin approached table 12 with barely concealed annoyance. "Good evening," he said curtly, not bothering with his usual enthusiastic greeting. "Can I start you with something to drink?" Harold smiled warmly. "Good evening, young man. We're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary tonight." Kevin forced a smile. "Congratulations. Drinks?" "Could we see your wine list?" Dorothy asked politely. Kevin sighed internally. He was certain they'd order the cheapest wine or, more likely, just water after seeing the prices. "Here you go," he said, practically dropping the wine menu on their table. "I'll give you a few minutes." Harold and Dorothy studied the menu carefully. Everything was more expensive than they'd anticipated, but this was their golden anniversary, a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. When Kevin returned, Harold said, "We'd like to order a bottle of the Chianti Classico, please." Kevin was surprised. That was a $78 bottle, not the cheapest on the menu, but certainly not what he'd expected from this couple. "Are you sure?" It's $78, Harold nodded. "Yes, we're sure. It's a special occasion." Kevin reluctantly went to get the wine, mumbling to Jessica, "They probably don't realize how much it costs. They'll freak out when they see the bill." When Kevin returned with the wine, his service remained poor. He poured small tastings without the proper ceremony, didn't offer to decant the wine, and rushed through the explanation of the evening specials. "Do you need more time with the menu?" he asked impatiently. Harold and Dorothy were studying the entrees, trying to find something within their budget while still making their anniversary special. "Could you tell us about the chicken marsala?" Dorothy asked. "It's chicken with marsala sauce," Kevin replied flatly, offering no details about preparation or sides. "And the seafood risotto?" "Rice with seafood." Harold sensed Kevin's dismissive attitude but chose not to make an issue of it. "We'll have the chicken marsala and the seafood risotto, please." "Appetizers?" Kevin asked, clearly hoping they'd say no. "We'll share the bruschetta," Dorothy said. Kevin wrote down their order with obvious impatience and walked away without asking about dietary restrictions, preferences, or offering fresh ground pepper or Parmesan cheese, all standard practices at Giuseppe's. At the service station, Kevin complained to Jessica. "They're going to run up a decent bill and then leave me 10%. I guarantee it. These old people have no idea how tipping works." "Kevin, you're being terrible to them," Jessica said. "They seem like a sweet couple celebrating their anniversary." "Sweet doesn't pay my rent," Kevin replied. Meanwhile, Harold and Dorothy were trying to enjoy their evening, despite Kevin's poor service. They'd been looking forward to this dinner for months, and they weren't going to let one rude waiter ruin their celebration. "Remember our first date?" Harold asked, holding Dorothy's hand across the table. "Angelo's Italian restaurant, 1972, Dorothy smiled. "You were so nervous you spilled marinara sauce on your uniform." They talked about their life together. Harold's military career, the challenges of military life, raising their children on various bases around the world, and the joy of watching their grandchildren grow up. But their conversation also touched on their deepest loss. Their son James had been killed by an IED in Fallujah while leading his platoon to safety. He was 28 years old, a West Point graduate, and following in his father's footsteps as a career Army officer. "James would have loved to see us celebrating 50 years, Dorothy said softly, touching the purple heart pin on her dress. "He's here with us," Harold replied, squeezing her hand. Kevin, observing from across the dining room, had no idea of the significance of their quiet conversation or the meaning behind Dorothy's pins. When Kevin brought their entrees, he practically threw the plates on the table without explaining the dishes or offering fresh ground pepper. He didn't refill their water glasses or check if they needed anything else. Giuseppe Romano, the restaurant owner, happened to be dining at the restaurant that evening with his wife. From his table, he noticed Kevin's poor service and the elderly couple's disappointed expressions. Giuseppe was a third-generation Italian-American whose grandfather had immigrated to America after World War II. He'd built Giuseppe's from a small neighborhood restaurant into Phoenix's premier Italian dining establishment, and he took pride in exceptional service for every customer. "Excuse me, darling," Giuseppe said to his wife. "I need to check on something." Giuseppe approached table 12 with a warm smile. "Good evening, folks. I'm Giuseppe Romano, the owner. How is everything this evening?" Harold and Dorothy looked up, surprised by the attention. "The food is delicious," Dorothy said diplomatically, though their wine glasses were empty and their water hadn't been refilled in 20 minutes. Giuseppe noticed immediately. "I see your glasses are empty. Let me take care of that." He signaled to Kevin, who reluctantly approached. "Kevin, please refill these glasses and bring fresh bread," Giuseppe said firmly. As Kevin walked away, Giuseppe noticed Dorothy's pins, particularly the Gold Star Mother pin, which he recognized because his own nephew had been killed in Afghanistan. "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, is that a Gold Star Mother pin?" Dorothy nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Yes, our son James was killed in Iraq in 2009. Giuseppe's demeanor immediately changed to one of deep respect. I'm so sorry for your loss. My nephew Tony was killed in Afghanistan. I know there are no words. Harold added, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary tonight. James always said he wanted to take us somewhere fancy when he got back from deployment. Giuseppe felt his heart break. Sir, may I ask, did you serve as well? Yes, Army. 32 years, retired colonel. Giuseppe was now fully understanding the situation. This wasn't just any elderly couple. This was a Gold Star family, a military family that had sacrificed everything for their country, celebrating their golden anniversary while remembering their fallen son. Colonel, ma'am, would you please excuse me for just one moment? Giuseppe walked directly to Kevin, his expression serious. Kevin, come with me. Now. In the privacy of the service station, Giuseppe confronted Kevin. Kevin, do you see that couple at table 12? Yeah, the old people who are going to stiff me on the tip? Giuseppe's voice became stern. Kevin, that old man is a retired Army colonel who served our country for 32 years. That old woman is a Gold Star mother, meaning she lost a son in combat fighting for our freedom. Kevin looked confused. I don't understand. You don't understand because you didn't bother to get to know your customers. That couple has sacrificed more for this country than you can imagine, and you've been treating them like garbage. Kevin began to realize his mistake. I didn't know. Kevin, they're celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Their son was killed in Iraq, and they're trying to honor his memory by having the nice dinner he wanted to give them. Giuseppe continued, and instead of receiving the respect and service they deserve, you've been rude, dismissive, and judgmental based on their clothes. Kevin felt sick. Mr. Romano, Kevin, you have two choices. You can go to that table right now, give them the most respectful, attentive service of your career, and personally apologize for your behavior. Or you can clean out your locker and leave. Kevin nodded quickly. I'll apologize. I want to make this right. Good. Because Kevin, that couple represents the best of America. They served, they sacrificed, they lost their son, and they're still here celebrating their love for each other. They deserve our absolute best. Kevin approached table 12 with genuine remorse. Colonel Bennett, Mrs. Bennett, he said respectfully, I owe you both a sincere apology. I provided you with poor service tonight, and that was completely unacceptable. You deserve much better, especially on your anniversary. Harold and Dorothy were surprised by the change in Kevin's demeanor. Young man, we appreciate the apology, Harold said graciously. No, sir, you don't understand. Mr. Romano told me about your military service and your son. I want to thank you both for your sacrifice, and I'm ashamed of how I treated you. Dorothy touched Kevin's arm gently. Son, we all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them. Mrs. Bennett, if you'll allow me, I'd like to make the rest of your evening perfect. You're celebrating 50 years of marriage and honoring your son's memory, and I want to be part of making that special. For the rest of the evening, Kevin provided exceptional service. He refilled their glasses before they were empty, brought complimentary appetizers, explained each course in detail, and even arranged for the kitchen to prepare a special dessert with 50 years written in chocolate. But the most meaningful moment came when Kevin presented them with a handwritten note. Colonel and Mrs. Bennett, thank you for your service, your sacrifice, and your son's ultimate sacrifice. Your 50 years of love and commitment is an inspiration. This anniversary dinner is on the house. Giuseppe's family. Dorothy began to cry. "This is too much." Giuseppe, who had been watching from across the room, approached their table. "Colonel, Mrs. Bennet, it's not too much. It's not nearly enough. Your son died protecting our freedom. Your family has given everything for this country. A free dinner is the smallest way we can say thank you." Giuseppe continued, "And I want you to know, from now on, you have a table here whenever you want. Every anniversary, every special occasion, every time you want to remember James, you have a home here." Harold stood and shook Giuseppe's hand. "Sir, your kindness means more than you know." As Harold and Dorothy prepared to leave, Kevin approached them one final time. "Colonel, Mrs. Bennet, I learned something important tonight. I learned not to judge people, and I learned about the sacrifices military families make. Would it be okay if I wrote to you sometimes? I'd like to learn more about your son and about serving others." Dorothy hugged Kevin. "Of course, dear. James would have liked you." 6 months later, Kevin had completely transformed his approach to customer service. He treated every customer with respect and dignity, and he'd started volunteering at the local VA hospital on his days off. He kept Harold and Dorothy's contact information and would send them cards on holidays and on James's birthday. He also started studying military history and joined a support group for people wanting to better serve veteran families. Giuseppe's restaurant became known throughout Phoenix as a place that honored military families. Giuseppe created a Gold Star table, a special table reserved for Gold Star families, always set with a small American flag and a card explaining the sacrifice these families had made. But for Harold and Dorothy, the most important outcome was simpler. They had experienced kindness when they expected indifference, and they had helped a young man learn about respect, sacrifice, and the true meaning of service. Every year on their anniversary, they returned to Giuseppe's. Kevin always served them, and each year their conversation grew deeper. Kevin learned about military life, about loss, about resilience, and about the kind of love that endures for 50 years, even in the face of unimaginable grief. And every year, they raised a toast to James, the son who couldn't be there, but whose memory had brought together 3 unlikely friends: a retired colonel, a Gold Star mother, and a young waiter who had learned that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear simple clothes and carry their courage quietly, asking for nothing more than respect and the chance to celebrate love that has survived war, loss, and half a century of life's challenges. Harold and Dorothy Bennet had served their country in uniform and at home, but perhaps their greatest service was teaching a young man that everyone has a story worth respecting, and that sometimes the most important lessons come from the people we least expect to be our teachers. Their 50th anniversary dinner had become much more than a celebration of their marriage. It had become a bridge between generations, a lesson in respect, and a reminder that true service continues long after the uniform comes off. And Kevin Walsh, the waiter who had almost ruined their evening, became one of their strongest advocates. Proof that understanding, respect, and second chances can transform not just individual hearts, but entire communities. Because sometimes the most important service happens not on battlefields, but at dinner tables, where strangers become family through the simple act of treating each other with the dignity every human being deserves.